Hey, how's it going, Jeff?
Good. How about you, DJ?
Oh, not too bad. I'm getting through this coronavirus in Chicago, and hopefully it's going to be over. How are you doing out there?
Doing well. Here in Nevada, everybody is stir crazy, and so we're just trying to keep everyone at bay. Everyone's so anxious to get out, especially this Memorial Day weekend, and so
That's how it is here in Chicago. People are starting to get antsy. It's 78 degrees and sunny here today. For Chicago, that's like awesome weather. For you guys, it's probably nothing special, but for us, it's awesome. When last week it was 40 degrees.
Holy cow. Yeah, actually, that's about what we were at off and on. We have that history of, wait 5 minutes, it'll change type thing here. So it is pleasant today as well.
I'm going to try and show it to you if I can do this.
Wow.
That's the view. That's Lake Michigan.
That's a beautiful view.
Yeah, I love my studio, that's for sure. It's going to make it hard to go into some place without such a view. But the point I was making is there is a ton of people out there, and they're not social distancing at all. They knock down the fences. The muscleheads knock down the fences to get to the workout equipment. And joggers knock down the fences so they can jog through the park. And so it just makes me realize that, people are starting to get tired of being stuck at home.
Yeah.
And the politicians better recognize it, or we're going to have some problems.
Sure.
All right. All right. Let me know when you're ready, Nick. All right. Welcome to another edition of the DJ Doran Show. And I am really excited to have our next guest on the show. His name is Jeff Bonanno. Did I say that right, Jeff?
You did. Right on the spot the first time. Good job.
First time. Well, I'm half Sicilian. So if I couldn't get an Italian name right, I'd be disowned. Jeff is he operates the website DoSomethingNice.net, and so we're going to be talking about his website, what made him begin the website, what sort of was that turning point. And I was listening to the podcast, Jeff, where you actually had a turning point moment that sort of changed the direction of what you were doing. So without any ado, tell our audience a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what your website is.
Sure. Well, currently, I happen to be, during the day, I'm an art and design lead with a major T-shirt company. And I've been doing that for over 6 years. But by night, I enjoy spending my time doing a lot of podcasting. And I've done I actually currently am doing 2 podcasts. The first one is the Sparks of Interest, which is a local podcast that helps identify some of the issues that we see here in our local community, but we generalize it and we share it with the rest of the world, because you never know. There's a lot of people that have the same issues where they live. And so we just, as friends, we decided to talk a lot about that. But then I have another one that I have been wanting to do for a while. And as you mentioned, it's the Do Something Nice podcast. And it can be found on DoSomethingNice.net. This podcast was something that there was always something in me that I really wanted to express and try to help people become better people in the world. We've got so much negativity, and we've got so much angry, words that you see on social media even. And so it was like, okay, well, with all of that, why don't we have some good things going on? And so I had for a while wanted to express how to be, some sort of general rule of how to be kind to people. And this was the best route for me. And the idea of doing something nice for someone without being caught was a challenge that I decided to start. having people take on. Of course, that was one of the first things that I tried to do. And it occurred to me, take a step back. For a while, I had always wanted to, I had made some mistakes when I was younger, and I had hurt some people.
What? Nobody makes mistakes when they're...
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, I'm that one other person. I'm that guy. And to this day, it haunts me how cruel I was and I was a kid. So, you could just say, well, I was a kid, so how would I have known? But it's something that haunted me all my life. And
that's was that the episode with your friend they were teasing her, and then they started teasing you, and then you dumped her because you didn't want them to tease you anymore? Is that...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was it. And I keep wanting to figure out how am I ever going to apologize to her. And I have never been able to get in contact with her. I've never been able to find her. So it's just something that I've been living with all my life. But jump forward a lot longer in my lifetime. I was at a period in my life where I was down on my luck. I was struggling financially. We had a new kid on the way. I was trying to figure out how I was going to make ends meet. And a coworker of mine, without even prompting him or anything, he realized that there was some struggles going on with me, and he ended up giving me a card that that had $100 in there. Him telling me that he knew that this was something that I could probably use right now, and also included instructions of don't repay me. Instead, when you are able to, please just give it to somebody else that might need it. And of course, since then, I've probably repaid that favor 100 times over whenever I can, but it stuck with me. But it was still like something that I couldn't quite figure out. Well, how do I define this? How do I create this understanding of what happened to me and how to share that with others? And so at one point I saw a sign that was worded a little differently, and it actually said to be kind to somebody without being seen or found out. And that's when it occurred to me, okay, this is the type of message I wanted to start sharing with people. And around the same time, I also had I don't know if you've ever had a situation where somebody's paid for your coffee or something in the drive-through.
I haven't had that happen, and as much coffee as I drink, that would be awesome. But but I haven't had that happen. But I have read about it several times.
Yeah, well, I happen to be one of those that actually received that act of kindness, and the concept of, well, that person got away, and I never even got to say thank you. And that was their intent. They didn't want some sort of recognition. They just wanted to be kind. They wanted to be a nice ninja. And so at that point, it was like, okay, I'm tying this all together. I'm figuring out how now I can actually share this kind of challenge with people and share this message of kindness to others. And that's really how all the ingredients that really put this together. And then when I ran for political office, it gave me the other side of it, of where I actually have to stand out in front of people to actually challenge them and talk to them about it.
And before we get into that, I do want to talk about the whole getting into politics thing and how, in today's environment, it's so horrible. It's so horrible the way people treat each other. And I can't even understand why anybody would want to be in politics. Even if you had the best intent, somebody is going to dig something up and twist it, and then the internet takes it and runs with it. Look at what Joe Biden is going through right now. Comment he said off the cuff. It's a daily routine with President Trump. What he says off the cuff, and and all of these other politicians jockeying around. But so tell me more about what led up to that pivotal moment, right? So what led up to that pivotal moment? You're younger, you didn't treat your friend really well, but after that, how did you move forward until you finally got to that point? You're like, I have to make a fundamental shift or direction.
Wow, that's a very deep question. I think there was a lot of stuff that happened in that. But I will say that one of the things that kind of helped me keep going was the encouragement from my mom. My mom has always been really, such a good person. And I can count on one hand how many times I've ever seen her actually like really angry at somebody. And I was one of those people. So, but she always had a kind word to say, and she still does. And she's always been one of my biggest supporters. And also with me now having kids, I realized that as they grow up, they're going to have that foundation that's being built right now. And do I provide them the right tools, the right material to grow up to be a decent human being? Or do I share with them how cruel they could be and how they could use their newfound tools just for the worst? I didn't want to go in that direction. I wanted to raise, my kids the right way.
Yeah. Do you have faith? Are you Christian? Are you Catholic? Are you Jewish? Religious life?
That's an interesting question. And actually, while I was baptized as a Christian in the same sense that a lot of people are like, you've accepted God into your life and all that kind of stuff, blah blah blah, it was more of I was finding an inner peace within myself. And I have really not adhered to any kind of actual faith other than my own. I could go on and on a whole different podcast episode about my actual beliefs, but I'm very well-rounded. I'm very open-minded. And as long as people don't force something down my throat or use acts of violence, I'm okay with whatever their beliefs are, because it's what helps guide that morality in their life.
Sure. So I have another question about your friend, because that friend, from what I've read and what I've listened to, was a unintentional milestone in your life. Whether you knew it at the time or not, it affected you in a deep way, and it created a pivot in a direction that a lot of people don't recognize when they have those moments. And so my question to you is, did you recognize it at the time that was a pivotal moment? Or was it just sort of like, oh, I want this confrontation. I fucked up with this girl and I didn't treat her right. And now I feel guilty about it. And then it ate away at you. And then you reach that pivot point later. Does that make sense? It
does. I'd say a little from column A, a little from column B, all of column C. I still remember the images of when she realized that I had basically turned on her. And, as my mom was driving away, I was looking in through the window and I saw, just her face, how brokenhearted she was in that split moment. And I could feel how horrible it was at that point in time. But as a kid, I couldn't quite identify really what I had done to the full extent. And as I got older and got more mature, and I continued to relive that moment in my head.
Isn't that amazing? I want to stop you there for a second. That is such an important point that a lot of people don't realize, is that when you have those milestone moments, even if you intellectualize it and you understand, hey, this is what I did and these are the consequences of that action. What I find, and I've seen it consistently now in other people that I've spoken to, is that even though that incident has passed by or has been resolved in some way, that until you have full resolution, every time you think of that incident, you will feel those feelings. And that's why it's so important to sort of, if you can, come to terms with what happened and find that resolution, because those feelings, even as an adult, successful, reasonably successful male, there are certain things in my life that happened that are still completely unresolved. And when I think about them, I am that 12-year-old insecure kid, and all those feelings of low self-esteem, which I don't really have anymore, but they come to the surface, and it's amazing how strong they are even after 30 years.
Then that's very true. And that's a really good point. Because I'm 39 now, and this was something back in elementary school. It's stuck with me ever since. The images have stuck with me ever since.
I hear it in your voice. I see it in your body language. The universe will eventually resolve that for you. I fully believe that whatever you believe, that circle will complete, and you'll be confronted with that. And once that is resolved, that emotional baggage will be healed. Because I want to share something that I've learned over the years, is that when you don't communicate and you don't resolve an issue, you can put plaster over it. You can put a Band-Aid on it. You can put bandages on it and everything. But the minute you take that stuff off, it is an exposed, festering wound. And you cannot heal. You cannot even begin to heal until you have that forgiveness or you have that resolution with whatever the cause was. And so you learn to live with it. You learn to bandage it. You learn to say, okay, it's over there. But anything that you do that disturbs it dredges up those feelings. And then you have to deal with that again. That's why my hope for you would be that eventually you will find this person and have that resolution, because then you really will have healing. And then what you'll have is not a festering wound, but a scar.
Yeah.
Scar, reminder. In my mind, the scar is always a reminder of what you went through and survived.
And that's true. And nobody should ever be ashamed of the scars that they carry, because those scars, they are part of your history. They are those small moments in your life that were created because of things that you've done, because of those milestones. And, both emotional and physical scars have got some sort of history to it, some sort of story to it. And that's who you become.
That's who you become. And I want to point out two other things before we move forward. One is about having kids, because we have a daughter and we have 2 grandkids already.
Oh, wow.
And matter of fact, our daughter's birthday is today. She's 29.
Wow. Well, happy birthday.
Yeah. And then of course about the influence of your mother, right? So like my father passed when I was young, and so I didn't have that adult relationship with him. The transition from being your dad and he's like your hero to now being a peer almost. Mutual respect. I didn't have that part. But with my mother, I did have a very close relationship, and she wasn't a college educated person. She was from Sicily. My grandma didn't even speak English. And so, but she always had like these practical things that she would share. And she'd say, well, I don't understand this, but this is what, right? So whenever I was going through some difficult things, especially like coming out, was a deal, right, for me, because I was a pilot in the Air Force. I couldn't come out. I was living like a double life, and I was a born again Christian, so I had all these screwed up things and buried treasures, or whatever you want to call them. And I remember my mother, when I came out to her, and I remember her saying, well, I don't know anything about that, and but I love you because you're my son, and that's never going to change, which was awesome. And then I said, well, I don't know how to reconcile those two lives. And she gave me a piece of advice that I still use to this day. And she said, focus on being a good human being first. And then everything you are, everything you do, everything you're involved with will be filtered through that. So you don't have to worry about fitting the mold of what this person thinks you should be and what that person thinks you should be. Be a good person, and you'll be a good businessman, and you'll be a good gay person, and you'll be a good podcaster, and you'll whatever. Do you see what I mean? And even though she didn't understand the dynamics and all the complexities of it, that practical advice, like getting right to the point of it, was what helped guide me through, and I think saved my life, because I just up until that point couldn't reconcile it. So when you were talking about your mother, it made me immediately think, and she's been passed now 10 years, 20 years. And as you were talking about her, I'm literally feeling the emotion of missing those moments of calling and getting that advice. And that's 20 years ago. That ties into the point I was saying, is that the issue that you have with your friend is always going to be there. And you learn to manage it, and you learn to get with it, and get on with it. But until you resolve it, until you say your piece and gain that forgiveness, or even if she doesn't forgive you, it's not for her benefit, it's for your benefit.
Yeah.
And you can't really truly heal. That's true. Just my own 2 cents on that. So I went through all your stuff, that I went to your website, and I mean, there's so many fascinating things. I just finished watching that movie, 26 Years. Is that what the short movie you did?
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what this is about, but it looks like it's about death.
It was a very interesting one. They actually brought me on board to help out with a lot of the visual effects on that. And it was a lot of fun. That was when I started trying to expand my interest in different hobbies and stuff, and I actually really got into video and special effects and stuff like that. And so it really kind of helped me open up my eyes as far as what entertainment production is. And I was able to actually apply a lot of those skills and stuff into doing the podcasting and all that kind of stuff. And sadly, I still have all my video equipment that's just sitting there with dust, and now I'm using all my microphones and everything instead.
Well, the funny thing is I love that you have such a creative side, but I also love the fact that you decided to run for the mayor of Sparks. Did I read that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that was that. Now, I will say, if you have the galls to do it, put that on your bucket list. Even if you don't even think you're going to win, I say, at least give it a shot. Figure out, maybe what kind of office, do maybe a local office. Now, there is a chance that you might win, and then you're stuck having to do it. But
how do you feel about being a campaign manager?
I have actually been asked that several times. So I'd have to get my wife's permission. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I actually, one thing I want to segue over to, Jeff, is the other thing between your mother and those life-changing moments. I wanted to talk about kids, what having kids does to you. So you can be wild and crazy, and you can take all these chances, but the minute you have kids, most people, I'm not going to say all people, but most people, it triggers something that, all of a sudden my needs are down here, and my whole world is to make sure that they're protected. Did that have an impact on you as well? Yeah,
it was a long transition for me prior to having kids. Because one of my previous jobs, I worked for our local school district, and myself and one of the counselors, we decided to start doing a counseling through magic program after school, where we gathered select kids and we started teaching them magic, but we also use this time to help teach them how to present in front of an audience, how to problem solve, how to overcome obstacles in their life. You name it. We started working with them on all this kind of stuff. And it just so happened one of the kids who I'm still connected to, a great gal, but she just out of the blue one day told me, you know what? I think you will make a wonderful dad when you decide to have kids. And at that point, all of a sudden I started thinking to myself, wow, you know what? Maybe I am able to, help guide kids in the right direction, because I was just doing this because I wanted to help. I wanted to, help some of these kids out and all that kind of stuff. But I never thought about the fact that I was being, some sort of guidance to them. And so fast track forward, when my wife and I reconnected, we were sweethearts in 5th grade. And so we reconnected much later. And she already had a daughter from her previous marriage. And so I accepted her into my life as well. And we later then had another little girl. And it's just, over the time, I was already, without realizing it, prepping myself for this moment of having kids in my life. I pretty much got both ends of the spectrum all at the same time. I had a toddler and a teenager, which, I guess if you're going to go for the gold.
Well, I had a similar situation. My husband had a daughter, and I came into the picture when she was 10. And so when I came into the picture, I was a military guy, an ex-military guy, and I was very structured and all of that. And she was very strong-willed, and so we clashed. For a few years, and and now we're very close, obviously, of course. But I'll never forget. I thought to myself, when I first came out, and I thought, I'm not going to have kids. I'm saved from all that. I have a huge Italian-Irish family. Tons of kids. They all procreate like rabbits. And so I have, I don't even know how many nieces and nephews. So I was like, oh, I'm good with the kid department, right? Now, all of a sudden, we have a 10-year-old, and she becomes a teenager. And then, they go through the life changes, and her mother wasn't really in the picture. And so we're trying to figure out how to explain all these things and go bra shopping and boys and driving and, us ruining her life every day, for at least 3 years. And, her thinking that we never were young, that we were, we just popped out as an adult. So we didn't understand any of the things that she was going through and that sort of stuff. Now, as a parent, as a parent, she's like, I get it, and that was great for us when she finally said that. But girls are hard because, especially for dads, because you want to protect them from all the things that that you did or tried to do when you were younger. But you can't, especially in today's world. All you can do is teach them to hopefully make good decisions and protect them as best you can. But those were big influences, right? Because it goes from being selfish to selfless all of a sudden.
It does. And you also have to really take in consideration the new points of view. I'll admit, before I got into my marriage and everything and having kids in my life and stuff, I probably was that typical middle-aged, well, I wasn't really middle-aged yet, but I was that typical white straight male. And the way I viewed life was a certain way. It was how I was raised and all that kind of stuff. And my wife being pan, and my oldest, when she came out, I had to learn how to accept that the world is not just like me. The world is not just, one book off the shelf. There are many pages, there are many books, there are many bookshelves, there's many libraries. And to be able to have that open mind, it's not easy. I mean, I did struggle for a while.
Listen, Listen, I'm telling you, Jeff, you're not alone. Even as a gay man, it was very difficult for me. I came out late. I was in my late 30s before I finally came out. And then, something that you're saying is I had to confront all that. I still have to confront all that. I'm a white male coming from a very conservative Catholic Irish family, very homophobic. In a lot of cases, I call it soft racism, where like they're like, "Oh no, I'm not racism," but it's like, and I have to always overcome those things because that's how I was reared. And the second thing is I have no idea what transgender issues were, or any of these other, non-binary and all the rest of it. I had to educate myself in the middle of being, and I know this is kind of weird, but I don't know if Nick told you, I own a media company, in LGBT media company. It's the largest one in LGBT media. As a matter of fact, Joe Biden's campaign manager out of New York asked me to be on their advisory council for LGBT issues. And I'm confronted with all this. I'm like, I don't think I'm qualified to be on there. I'm not an activist. I have no history. I didn't march in any parades. I've never been gay bashed. I was a pilot in the Air Force for 23 years. And I'm, and you have to, all of a sudden you're confronted with all these different things, people with pink hair and people that think differently and all these other things that I always thought were odd, and I never wanted to be associated with it because I was closeted. Now all of a sudden it's thrown in your face. And that's why I was saying to you earlier, the universe has a way of sort of figuring out what you need to learn and what you need to confront and then making that happen. And I don't know why, but as I'm talking to you and looking at you, and I just have this weird sense, I call it my pilot sense, but I have this weird sense that you're going to find that girl. You're going to find that girl, and it's not going to be through direct research as much as it's going to be something's going to unfold and it's going to be there. And but it is a challenge for every one of us. We have a choice. Do we say, okay, I'm going to fight against this and I'm going to resist this, or am I going to really try and open up my viewpoint? And and it's not easy, but that's what I've chosen to do. And it sounds like that's what you've chosen to do as well.
Yeah. And, one thing that kind of runs through my mind as we've been talking about all of this stuff and things that happen in our life and our choices we make. One thing that I've always lived by was the idea of earn your life, earn this, earn what was given to you. I mean, you were born without, being able to answer, yes, you want this, or no, you don't. You were just given, the gift of life. And so now that you've been given that gift of life, what are you going to do with it? You can squander it, or you can actually put it to good use, and you can earn what was given to you. And so that's something that really does motivate me to want to continue to push forward, even when times get tough, because there was a reason why I continued to survive and thrive. And while others were not as lucky, I'm still here. And so I definitely want to make sure I earn it. And I want to do what's right by what was given to me.
One of the things that I saw in my show notes that I was looking at on your website, and it talked about life-threatening situations, right? And people acting quickly to save lives. Where did you find these stories? How did you ferret all of that out?
Well, one of the things is I just try to stay current with current events and everything. You had mentioned what was it? One of your more recent shows, A Tale of Positivity.
Yeah.
The Good Network.
Good News Network.
Yeah, the Good News Network. Sorry, I actually love going to that site.
Yeah, John.
And yeah, there's some really interesting stuff on that site, and so I do find a lot of stuff on there. I also will pull from I'll just do a shout out and try to hear from other people's stories if they have anything. I love hearing from people. And on top of that, about 6 or 8 months ago, I started working with a gal who lives in Nigeria. Adoteo Tawakali too is one of my normal writers who will write for me on the show. And so I give her the freedom to scour the web too. And her being in Nigeria, she actually has different sources where she pulls information from. And so she hears stuff that I don't even hear about, which is really interesting because it becomes an eye-opener for me that here in America, we have our sources where we get a lot of our information from, the news media and all that kind of stuff. But other countries have different channels. And so some of the things that she digs up is rather interesting. And I actually have to, I make sure that everything that we are all finding is, valid. I check Snopes and all that kind of stuff. But there's stuff that she shared with me, including things in her hometown that us here in America would be like, wow, that really happens. And
Jeff, I think that's one thing that's interesting. When I did that show, The Tale of Positivity, my thought was, I just want to, I'm a news junkie. Because I'm in media, I always I'm a researchaholic and all that. And if you allow it, the mainstream news media and even the news media here in the United States, you would think that we're horrible people, that everyone is a horrible person. We're racist, we're misogynistic, we're homophobic, we're violent, we're this, we're that, and everything, because that's all you see on the news. And so I decided I wanted to just search. And I didn't even think I would find anything, but I found a lot. There's a lot of good happening in the world. There are a lot of people doing good things and doing the right things, and you don't see that. And one thing that I've said often is, if you're bombarded with negativity enough times, you'll eventually become negative, and you can't help it. It's just human nature. So I wanted to find some positive things, and then that's how I found John Krasinski's The Good News Network. And I thought it was cute, and kind of cute because some of the artwork they did with looks like kids' drawings and things. But it was all positive news. And I found that after I watched that, I felt good. And so I wanted to do a show that said, hey, in this world where everybody is, hating on the president or hating on other people, or there's somebody got shot in Georgia. I don't know if you saw that while he was jogging, and all these other different things. And of course, now as we go into a presidential election, it's going to get 10 times worse. I wanted to just say, hey, I want to remind you, there are good people still in this world. There are good people doing good things, small things, and so that's why when Nick said that you were going to be on the show, I was excited because I like the idea. I like the idea, Jeff, of doing something. You don't have to blow a horn and say, "Oh, look what I did," but doing something and just standing back and watching someone look around and say, "Who paid for my groceries?" or "Who paid for my coffee?" or "Who, mowed my lawn?" or something like that. I think that is fundamentally what excites me about what you're doing. Is you're doing something nice in private, and your reward will come later. If you have a Christian faith, you know that your reward will come later. But regardless, why do we always have to do something and then expect a reaction? Why can't we just do it and that's it? It ends right there. I just did it, and then pay it forward. I'll never forget I want to say 3 or 4 months ago, there was a older lady, and she was out on the street here in Chicago where it's cold, and I gave her $20, and because to me, what is $20? It's 2 mochas, at Starbucks, maybe a little bit more, but and so when I gave her the $20, she just started crying, and it, in turn, what I remember about that is what was inconsequential for me made a significant impact on her. And that is something that I think, I do think sometimes lose sight of, is that what you have is a blessing, but a small portion of that can alter someone's life, change that, their day, their week, their month, or whatever. But I like the idea of doing something nice, for someone and not broadcasting it. So I applaud you for that. I do.
Well, thank you.
And I love your story. I do. I wish I want to learn more about it, and I want to keep digging around there, but there are a few other things I want to talk to. But at the end, if we have time, I want to go, especially, I am always fascinated by the journey of when you're going on a specific trajectory and then something happens and then you almost make a 180-degree turn in your life, and now you're a different person. And what is that like? So I want to talk about that more, but before that, I want to talk about running for the mayor of Sparks. First of all, why? And then the second of all, how?
Those are, and I want to say though, when people first decide to run for office, those are the two questions that are usually the hardest to answer too. The first one, why, is probably usually a little easier because they have some sort of motivation. They're angry about something, they're passionate about something, and they're like, I want to make a difference. And so when the 2016 elections came and went, and you could see people were getting really angry, or people were rejoicing. And one thing that really kind of stood out was the fact that when there were so many people that were wanting to run to Canada and leave the United States, regardless of who you voted for, honestly, it should not be that kind of situation where you have a mass amount of people that they are willing to just up and leave their country, just because somebody, was elected. And, of course, then I made some comments to my wife. I'm like, maybe, there's other people out there that could run for president too. If we have a television host that won, maybe somebody else could. My wife made the comment, she's like, well, why don't you run for president? And I was like, okay. And then thinking in my head, and my wife probably at that point was probably still not thinking that I was taking her seriously, but behind the scenes, I was actually looking into it. What does it take to run for president? Okay, I don't have that kind of money. I don't have that kind of name recognition. And so chances are not going to happen. But at the same time, here locally in Sparks, Nevada, our mayor had announced that he was not going to run for office during the next election. I was like, well, why don't I just give it a shot? I ran it by my wife. She still thought I was joking. And I said, no, I think I'm going to do this. And she's like, okay, do it. And at first it was like, okay, well, I do want to make a difference in the community. I want to turn things around. I may not necessarily like how things are being ran, but I didn't fully understand what was, completely going on in my community. So I did more research, and without even realizing how far I'd gone into this research, I officially announced that I was going to run for mayor for the city of Sparks. So that pretty much opened up the floodgates, and I still had no clue what I was doing. How am I going to do this? I've just told the world that I'm going to run for office, but I don't know the first thing about running a campaign. I've done some public speaking. Like I mentioned earlier, I did a little bit of magic and stuff in my life. And so I felt comfortable in front of a group, but I knew I needed a lot more than that. And there sadly is not much information for people running for local office. If you want to run for state, Senate, or national senate, maybe be a congressman or, a governor or something like that. They've got some information, but nothing really for local offices, like your city council or mayorship or anything like that. So it required me to be willing to ask lots of questions, make lots of mistakes, get involved with a lot more local political groups and organizations. And I don't know how it is where you live, but in Sparks, it's a nonpartisan position. So I felt I was a little bit more comfortable with that, because I could easily see myself fiscally conservative, but socially liberal. Mm-hmm. And again, I wasn't afraid to talk to people, so asking lots of questions. And I actually had to learn just through mistakes. And, I think probably the hardest thing was saying something that people didn't like and having to be okay with the fact that no matter what, they're not going to like you.
Yeah, you definitely have to have a thick skin.
Yeah. And you have to grow that thick skin really fast, because people will eat you alive really, really quick. And it's interesting also the fact that even local politics have got a lot of dirt, and there's people that are really slimy and stuff like that. And I learned a lot of dirt on a lot of people really fast. And what do you do with that info?
Do they dig dirt on you?
I'm sure there was probably something, but nothing really, nothing bad. I mean, there was no sexual harassments or
that doesn't preclude you from running for office, president.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, there was nothing bad like that. I mean, I did stupid stuff as a kid. I jumped off of a moving vehicle. I may have stolen a, construction cone with my buddies as I was driving, through a neighborhood or something. I may have done something like that. But
yeah, I have. I've always thought that it would be interesting to be in politics, because I like to speak in public, and I certainly have strong opinions about things, but I've done some crazy shit over the years that I'm not exactly proud of, and I was heading in the wrong direction for a while, especially after my dad's sudden death. He died suddenly, and I didn't deal with it very well. And so I always worry that if I ever ran for office, they would dig back 40 years and say, oh, do you remember that and this and that? And how would I deal with that now as an adult, But, that ties into where I want to go next. And this is something that is important to me, and it's something that I'm still trying to grapple with, and that is social media, right? Mm. So what happens when you get upset on social media, or people get upset with you? And I just had that experience recently here in Chicago, where I called out somebody on one of the Facebook groups in our neighborhood, and I said, because they were tearing down the fences and they were working out on the workout equipment, and I took pictures when I was walking the dog, and I posted them, and I said, this is what people are doing. And someone called me a fucking creep who takes pictures and this and that. We got into a big argument, and people were defending me, and people were attacking me and telling me to mind my own business. And I was like, this is not worth it. I was just trying to sort of say, this is what people are doing, and maybe we should act a little bit differently, but it was just, it took on a life of its own. How do you deal with that?
And it's interesting because I actually recently did an episode that talked a little bit about peer mediation and stuff like that. And I spoke about another podcast where he doesn't define it as peer mediation, but he is, in a sense, mediating between two parties who say something online and the other person doesn't like what they have to say. And so they start doing a pile on, and all hell breaks loose, and words are spoken that they wish that they could erase, but it's the internet. It won't ever get erased.
Right.
And, that's one of the first things you have to realize is that it's not going to ever get erased. And no matter what you put on there, somebody is going to find something that they're not going to like. And I think one of the things that people, their first mistake when it comes to social media is that they have some sort of reason for posting it. They have some direction they're trying to go with a picture or a comment, and they don't take into consideration all the different ways that somebody can read and take whatever it is that they put online. And
right. No context.
Right.
A lot of posting.
Yeah, and that is probably, I think, the first mistake a lot of people make is they mean one thing, but it comes off as something totally different. And so, and my very first advice is, if you write something out, you can write it out, but don't hit enter, or use something, a different platform like a Word document or something like that, and type it out, and just sit back for a minute, type it out, think about what you had just written, reread it a couple times, and maybe even ask somebody else to reread it. You might be wanting to put that out like immediately because everybody's got to know about this right now.
Sure.
But if you're willing to take that extra 5 minutes, or even maybe just sleep on it if it's something really thick and deep, you can get your spouse's opinion on it. Talk a little bit about it. But whatever you do, don't go into posting something with a closed mind. Understand that other people have a different understanding of what you were just saying. And unfortunately, if you don't do that, there's a chance you might lose friendships over it. You might, it might be something as big as breaking up a family. I've seen that happen. And it's all because they didn't mean it a certain way, but it came across something totally different. And especially when it comes to like politics and stuff like that. Oh my gosh.
I know, I consider myself a libertarian if I wanted to be classified, but I'm more of an independent, right? So I'm an independent in LGBT media where everyone is extremely far left, or many people are extremely far left or Democrat, and they just assume that I'm the same. And the amount of the pie that is available for moderate people that are just questioning facts is really slim. It's a very slim piece. And I've had publishers who were educated men and women, successful men and women, storm out of a dinner because I questioned their interpretation of a specific law, which was the transgender ban on the military. And I, as a military person, I said, that's wrong. What your interpretation is wrong. It's about deployability. And I went on to explain all the facts, and they didn't even like that because we now find ourselves in a society where we're influenced by talking points and sound bites, and we're intellectually lazy. So we don't do our homework. We don't go to Snopes, or we don't go to these other things. We read the headlines. And if the headline says, Trump hates anybody that does something nice, then, we have an emotional reaction, right? So we don't determine whether or not that's true or false or whatever. And so that's the world we live in. And in social media, everybody's an expert. I remember during when the pandemic first happened, I had this thing I was putting on there. It says, I am Facebook certified pandemic specialist.
I love it.
But I was really making fun of the fact that everybody on here, they have opinions, and they're, they run the gamut of some being informed and, overly informed, and some being, grossly uninformed. But the hard part about social media is that instantaneous, you want to react emotionally. Oh, somebody said this, so I want to react to that. And I'm not immune to that, Jeff. I'm not, and I know better. So, I'm going to take your advice. Hear that, Nick? I'm going to actually take that advice, and I'm going to write something and not post it right away. I'm going to write it and let it sit there for a minute and let somebody else look at it before I post it.
And another thing that you can do is, because you were talking about getting information and all that kind of stuff. When you actually post something out there and somebody comes back at you full force because they're angry, or you just want to come at somebody else full force because you're angry, instead of just thrown out there, well, you're wrong, and this is really the truth, and this is all the facts about it. Instead of doing that, because you're creating friction when you do that, you can instead just start asking questions, because you briefly touched a point on the fact that they have maybe some different outlook on what it's all about. And so if you start asking questions, John Doe has said that you're stupid for saying this, or I'm totally opposed to it because of X, Y, and Z. Start asking, well, how is it that you came about feeling this? What is some of the information that you've learned that led you to believe this information? Because I'd like to learn more about it. And if you come off not as confrontational and use non-friction words or anything like that, it really does help, because then they're not feeling like they're necessarily being attacked, but you want to actually know and learn. And then from that information, it might actually help in understanding where they're coming from with saying that this is a bad idea or anything like that. They may not be as good at dealing with the friction, but you can be for yourself and for them in any kind of conversation like that.
Good advice, and well said. Not always easy. Not always easy, because I'll use my own personal experience. When someone attacks me, I initially want to attack back, and it's very hard to fight that base instinct to defend yourself, especially when it's emotionally based. Now, I want to talk about a couple of other things as we tie off here. One of the things is what do you like about podcasting? You have your podcast, and I've been listening to some of the episodes. What do you like about it? I mean, I enjoy it because this is like having new friends in my living room every week, and just we just bullshit about whatever. And I learn some things, along the way as well. So what do you like about podcasting?
It's interesting with the podcasting. It started off with I had no idea what podcasting really was, and after I wrapped up my campaign for running for office, I had spent so much time and energy getting my name out there and creating that recognition. It was like I didn't want to necessarily throw that away. I didn't necessarily want to run for another position in office or anything.
Do you have any aspirations for political office in the future?
I don't know about that.
Or you cure it?
Yeah, again, ask my wife. But it was like, okay, well, what else do I do? And I have a really close friend of mine. He's like, well, you could either start doing a blog or you could do a podcast. And I was like, well, blogs are great, but that's become so cliche. Oh, I have a blog. And so I was like, well, why don't I try doing podcasting? And so the sparks of interest was born first, and I enjoyed it so much. I was like, okay, and part of me, I actually like talking, and I love, sharing my knowledge and information and having conversations with other people. And so that really started kicking off, and I really enjoyed it. And like I mentioned prior, I had all this video equipment that was collecting dust, and so that means I was already invested in some of the equipment for the audio side of it, and I just started going with it, and I really then enjoyed it. We had the opportunity to have some guests join us, and I started listening to other podcasts, and I started really learning so much about what it takes to be, in a podcast. And I already had some radio experience, some television experience. And so this was just another avenue that I wanted to check out. And from there, it was like, okay, that passion of do something nice was still there. And I really wanted to find a way to share that message and challenge people to do something nice without being caught. Sure. And so I then created the Do Something Nice podcast. And in turn, it turned into a more of the desire to want to create a network of kindness. And so that's one of the reasons why I did do something nice.net. The other reason is because .com was already taken, but it really did fit the mold. And it's like, there's this network of kindness that is out there. And you were saying yourself that as you continue to look around, you realize there was just so much kindness and so many good stories out there. But
right,
people don't necessarily see it.
We don't necessarily get to see it. And I think that I think the one thing that I liked when Nick was suggesting that you be a guest on the show is I thought, you know what, why can't, even if we don't have a podcast that is all about doing something nice, why can't we be part of your movement, your network, and we can also promote things that people are doing that are nice, and say, hey, we're going to tie back to what you're doing and say, there are good people in the world. And I do find that my own internal study a while back about the effect of media on people is, if you watch enough negative news, like if you watch the mainstream media and you see all the violence in Chicago, every time I talk to my family in New York, which is where I'm originally from, like, oh my God, you're in Chicago. They're killing everybody. There's murder capital of the world and whatever. I've lived here for many years. I've never seen any of that. Of course, I don't deal in drugs. I'm not a criminal. I'm not engaged in that lifestyle, nor do I expect that from any other people, because I've been in those neighborhoods and they're just regular people. The crime doesn't have any boundary. And I think that what we don't hear about are all the nice things Chicagoans do for each other, during, like now, the COVID-19, or during bad weather, or during, any other crisis that any other city has. There are always nice people, but we don't hear about that because they don't affect your ratings, or they don't sell advertising or what have you. That's why I think it's important to sort of say, okay, I want to talk about these important issues and that there's a place for that. But I also want to talk about this. And that is the nice side of life, because otherwise, you get angry. I found myself being angry when I would watch the news, and I'd be angry and I'd be outraged by, people's behaviors or acts of violence or acts of criminality, so one of the things that I've sort of been hooked on lately, not to bore you too much, but you ever see these videos all over Facebook where these animal rescue groups, they go and they rescue these dogs that have been abused or abandoned or whatever, and then they take them to the vet and they clean them all up, and then they live a happy life. I found myself watching those, and at first I got really angry. Like, how could anybody do this to a helpless animal? How can anyone do that? And then so I started to Google things that people were doing that were good, like rescuing the dogs, or a little kid selling lemonade and gives all the money to the Wounded Warrior Project or something like that. And I realized that the more I watched those negative things, the angrier I got. The more I watched those positive things, the happier I got. And I realized, in layman's terms, the correlation between the two. So that's why I think it's important that not only do we talk about the important issues, but that we also talk about the good things that people are doing. And so I think podcasting is a great way to reach a mass audience. And because of COVID-19, now I've sort of kind of gotten used to using Zoom, which I really like. And so I can talk to you in Sparks, Nevada, and I can watch Nick, the producer, and, make all his faces or whatever when he's producing the show. And it's, and I can have up to 12 people, talking about, well, I wouldn't have all that because you'd never get a word in edgewise. Right. So, but do you find that having your podcast, that you feel a lot more connected to your audience? Do you find that?
I do. And it also, it makes a great conversation starter. It's because it carries that message of, doing something nice for somebody without being caught. It creates that challenge, and it makes them start thinking. And really, I mean, how many people have you ever talked to where if you said, why don't you, take on this challenge and try it out, and they say, well, that's just a stupid idea. Who would ever want to be nice? You could easily turn it around and say, well, prove to me that it doesn't make a difference in one's life. I mean, it's been proven to actually help prolong your lifespan, being kind to others, being centering on the positivity as opposed to the negativity in life. It really has, a lot of the people that have like surpassed 100 years old, a lot of the things when you ask them, well, what's your secret to longevity? And, there was a gentleman recently who unfortunately passed away. I think he was though like 107 or something like that. But he said, I had a smile on my face every single day. And, so it has its health benefits of being happy. And on top of that, it's addicting. I mean, if you start doing kind things to people and you start getting in the habit of doing something, maybe start off like once a week and then challenge yourself to do it twice or 3 times a week. But that the feeling it creates inside, it's very powerful, and it motivates you to want to keep doing it, and it becomes an addiction, a positive addiction. And not only is it helping you, but it's helping your community, it's helping people around you, and it spreads. And that's the kind of virus that I'd like to spread, is the virus of kindness.
Yes, no social distancing for that. And we need more of that. As I've gotten older, especially, you live in a rough and tumble world and you fight your way through to survive. But as I've gotten to this point in my life, it's, I want to be reminded that there are good people in the world. I want to be reminded that there is good in the world, that evil and bad behavior and not nice behavior is not everything. It's not everything. And also, I believe that happiness is a choice, and being kind is a choice. And it's easier to be bad because it appeals to your baser instincts, I think. But to be kind is a choice, to say, I'm not going to let all this bombardment of negative news make me have this viewpoint about this situation, and I'm going to choose to react to it in a different way. And I think that is definitely something that could be needed a lot more. Jeff, I would love to have you come back on the show and sort of be our kindness expert. And when we talk about the things that because some of the things that I talk about on my show can be a little bit what's that word I'm thinking of? Confrontational, or maybe uncomfortable, especially when we talk about politics or interpretation of certain things. But I was telling Nick that I wanted to do at least one show a month where I just wanted to focus on the good things happening in the world, and that there are good people. And I would love to be able to promote what you're doing and then have you on, talk about that, and make us all feel better. And then use my audience to challenge them to do something nice as well.
That would be awesome. I would be honored. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Of course, that'd be so much fun too. So I'm going to give you the last couple of minutes. So tell anyone or everyone what you would like to see them do, and tell them more about doing something nice.
Absolutely. And to all of your listeners, as you've heard, the ability to be kind, it's not rocket science. Anybody can do it. It is something that you can start off, just do something small. It doesn't even have to be expensive. You could do something as little as when we get back into the office, if a coworker is maybe having a rough day, you can leave Post-it notes before they get in that just tell them how awesome they are, and some sort of note of encouragement. Or it can go as crazy as being kind enough to help somebody in need, where maybe they're not able to pay their bill or something like that, and you go ahead and pay it for them. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just the fact that you're doing something. And I challenge you to do something nice for somebody without being caught. That is without the need for recognition. If you are able to do that, And it might be hard at first. You're going to want to talk about it, and that's okay. Find somebody off the side to tell your story if you want to talk about it. But the idea is that you're not really looking for that recognition. Try it out, then try it again, and then try it again. After the third or fourth time, if it still isn't for you, that's fine. Find some other ways to get involved within your community, volunteer, do something like that. But I can guarantee you that if you start doing kind things out in the world, you're going to make a difference, not only for yourself, but the people around you, and it will spread. You won't have to necessarily tell people to be kind. They're going to start feeling it. They're going to pick up on what you're doing. Now, if you do get caught, that's okay too. You can go as far as, thanking them for giving you the opportunity to do a kind gesture, and ask them to pay it forward. And with that still encourages them to continue to do nice things. And you can share that positivity. You can share that challenge. Give them that challenge. As a matter of fact, tell them, I'm challenging you. I want you to make a difference in somebody else's life, but I want you to do it without the need for recognition. And tell them the exact same challenge, and build that network of kindness. And of course, if you have any need for advice or suggestions, or even just a pick-me-up because you're having a rough week, that's another reason why the Do Something Nice podcast is around. Because you have another source of hearing some motivational stories. You have a source where, because I also like to throw in quotes in all of my episodes. And I did a challenge once where every single day for a full year, I posted a new quote that motivated me. And I heard from people how they started posting up those quotes on their cubicle at work. And it just helped them get through the day. So I wanted to continue to share those quotes too. But I also like having some sort of venue for people to share what good things have happened to them. And I love highlighting, positive things that may have happened to my listeners. And I've had some really good stories from some things that really moved them or made a difference in their life. And they've always wanted to highlight that person or that event or that thing. And I want that as an opportunity for them to share that as well.
Perfect. Well, listen, all of you that have listened to this show, I'm sure you've enjoyed it as much as I have. But make sure you go to dosomethingnice.net. That's Jeff's website, and check it out. And take the challenge and tell him about it. Tell him about your experience. Also, you follow him on all of his social media. I don't know what they all are, but I'm assuming you're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Yeah,
you can find me on Facebook at Do Something Nice Podcast. On Instagram and Twitter at Be a Nice Ninja.
I love that. So Be a Nice Ninja, and then go to Jeff's website and all over his social media and help make an impact. Do something nice. Start small and then grow it from there, and then watch how it unexpectedly affects you in a positive way. So Jeff, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think we could have probably talked for another hour, especially if I'm so fascinated about your journey from where you were to where you had that pivotal moment, because to me, that is really inspirational, because so many people get to those moments and they don't realize them and they keep heading down the wrong path. And this moment, you recognize it and it changed the direction of your life. And that is truly inspirational and exciting.
Oh, DJ, the pleasure is all mine. I thank you so much for allowing me to be on your show and talk about this.
And by the way, you're also my hero for running for mayor of Sparks. And by the way, I've been to Sparks once.
Oh, really?
It's
awesome.
A few years ago. And now the next time that I know I'm going to be there, I'm going to make sure that we can connect and grab some coffee or something when we're in town. Absolutely. I would love that. All right. Take care, Jeff. It was a pleasure. The pleasure's all mine, DJ. You guys take care too. Stay safe out there. You can find all of the episodes of the DJ Doran Show on our website, djdoran.com, or on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Deezer, CastBox, and Podomatic, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes as they are available, and
Be sure to follow the DJ Doran Show on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.